Always wear safety glasses when working in the shop.
The safety glasses are over here by the sink in the white cabinet here. Make sure that you are grabbing a pair anytime you're working with tools or working near somebody who has the tools. If you are wearing glasses like I do, they should still fit over the top. And if you require a different pair, come see one of us and we will get you a pair that might fit better over your glasses. Or if you've got a smaller head and these feel too big, we can get you a pair that are a little bit smaller.
Wearing safety glasses means that when you are working, they are on your face. Safety glasses should not be on the top of your head while you are working. They do not do much good up there. And if you take your safety glasses off, you do not set them down on the lens. You always set your safety glasses down when you're not working on the upper frame or the blue portion, which is exactly where we place them when we set them back in the safety glasses cabinet. At the end of the day, all the safety glasses need to be placed back exactly where they belong, sitting correctly, or we will not get to be dismissed yet.
Report all accidents, injuries, and broken equipment to the instructor immediately.
Any accident we need to know about. When you tell us about an accident, we have first aid kit and safety materials and health materials up here in Poulis's aid kit. This includes gauze, bandages, disinfectants, cotton swabs, everything we need to make sure that you are safe if there is an accident or injury to occur in the shop.
We've both been trained in first aid, and so we are going to do our absolute best to keep you safe and to minimize any complications that may happen.
Jewelry must be removed when working with the lathe.
When you're in the shop, we want your jewelry removed, which includes rings, necklaces, earrings, stuff, anything that hangs down can get in the way. When you're working on the lathe, we're going to be working real close to the rotating part of the lathe with your hands, so it's really, really super important that we don't have any rings on our fingers or any loose bracelets or watches or stuff that might accidentally get caught in the stuff while we're working.
Long hair must be tied back or tucked in a hat.
When you are working with the lathe here, anything that can get caught when this thing is rotating, we need to make sure we take care of. And that's especially true with long hair. So make sure that you got a ponytail or a hat, or you can tuck your hair into the back of your sweatshirt or something. But it's super important that when you get ready to use the lathe, that your hair is tied back so that when you're leaning forward, it can't get caught in the rotating piece.
Long sleeve shirts and loose clothes must be rolled up neatly to keep them from getting caught in the lathe.
When we're working with the lathe, again, we're working very close with our hands, so we want to make sure that we get sleeves pulled back, and when we're working, nothing can get caught. If you've got hoodie strings, we don't want to lean in and have those hoodie strings get caught in the equipment where it can pull you in. So make sure that if you're wearing a hoodie, that you tuck those strings up inside so that nothing's hanging loose as you're working.
Remember the A, B, and C's of running the lathe. A is for anchoring the tool to the tool rest. B is touching the bevel of the tool to the workpiece. And C, rotate the tool until it begins to cut.
When we're working at the lathe, we're going to be using tools like this gouge. And we want to make sure that our first step is to anchor the bottom of the gouge here to the tool rest. We want to just rest that on there. We never want to try to cut with it off of the tool rest. The second thing is to take this bevel here and we want to make contact with the rotating piece and it'll start to click and make some noise. And then very slowly and carefully we rotate the handle up, which drops the cutting angle down to the piece, which will allow it to begin cutting. And so if we put our safety glasses on, turn on the lathe, we anchor, touch the bevel, and then slowly rotate until our piece cuts.
Never stop the lathe by using your hands.
When you turn on the lathe, it's moving very, very quickly. We never want to try to slow it down by our hands. Even when it's turned off, it's still going to take just a little bit to spin to a close or to a stop. We don't want to grab any part of this and try to slow it down with your hands. Let it come to a complete stop and then do any adjustments or checking on your project the way you may need to.
Only one person can use the machine at a time.
When we're at the lathe, we don't have a large space, and we want to make sure that each person who's using a lathe can concentrate fully on that. So when you're working on the lathe, there should only be one person here in front and working on it at a time. You should never have somebody cutting and maybe somebody sanding or doing something else. Only one person at a time. Wait for the tool to stop completely before you leave.
We have many different pieces of equipment in here that continue to run after you've shut them off. Examples would be the scroll saw, the bandsaw, the disc sanders, the drill presses, and the lathes. It's very important that you don't leave the machine until the machine has stopped moving, because it could be off and it still could be moving. Okay? So that's really important. Any piece of equipment you're using, do not leave it, and do not take your safety glasses off until the machine has come to a complete stop, and then you may leave. Start the machine before you put the tools up to it.
Okay, when you get ready to turn on the lathe, it's going to be very difficult to anchor your tool to the tool rest, hold on to with both hands onto the tool, and turn it on. So what we want to do is we want to turn this on first, then anchor, bevel, and cut.
Do not overload the tool blades with excessive pressure. It will not work better, and it damages the tools.
The gouges that we're using and the skews, different lathe tools, all have very, 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 very sharp edges. And we want to make sure that when we're doing this, we're just lightly touching the tool to the actual workpiece, because if you're pushing too hard, it will tend to damage not only your project, but it could also damage the tools. So just light, slow pressure as you're moving the tool back and forth across your workpiece will give you the best results.
Do not interrupt other people while they are using the equipment.
When people are using the tools, it could be the hand tools or one of the stationary tools like the bandsaw or the drill press or something like that. We want to make sure that you're not interrupting them. We want them to be able to concentrate on what they're working on. And if you're interrupting, it makes it very, very hard for somebody else to focus on the project that they're working on and use the tools safely. Work at a safe speed and concentrate on what you're working on.
This rule ties in with a lot of different rules we have in the shop. But the idea is that you are focusing and concentrating on the work before you, and that you're doing it at a safe and appropriate speed for the tool and the task at hand. This allows you to be efficient and safe within the shop for you and your peers. Adjust the tool rest before you turn on the lathe.
When we're working at the lathe, we want to make sure that the tool rest here, the part that we're anchoring our tool to and supporting our tool while we're cutting, is close to the project. We want it to be very, very close. We want it so that when you slide it up here and lock it into position, and you rotate the piece, that it doesn't quite touch. We do not want the piece, when we turn on the lathe, to hit the tool rest, but we don't want a big gap in between the board and the tool rest, because the tools can get sucked into that gap and cause injuries or damage your project. So you should be about 1/4 of an inch away as you spin it. A lot of our lathes have this hand wheel on the end, which works great for testing, but some of them don't, and you'll actually have to rotate the piece itself to make sure that it is clear. Once you've checked to make sure, then you can turn it on and begin your work.
If the piece of sandpaper or cloth gets caught on the lathe and spins, step back and turn the machine off right away.
While you're working, there's a chance that something can get caught in here. And if that happens, and we can get away from the lathe, we want to step back and get away as quickly as we can. So if it's spinning and your sandpaper or a cloth that you're working to apply finishes with gets caught, make sure that you step back, turn off that switch, and let the thing come to a stop before you go back and try to free up that piece of sandpaper or that cloth that may be stuck.
Never use wood that has loose knots or defects in it.
When we're using the lathe, this thing is going to be spinning very, very quickly. And we're going to be using a sharp tool to cut that into some kind of a shape. And if you have loose knots, if you have defects in here like cracks, or if you have fasteners like nails or screws or something that might be in there, that's going to cause damage to not only the tool, but your project as well. So we want to make sure that we have a good clean piece of wood in that lathe when we get ready to start turning.